Yeah, so in the last video I mentioned that I wanted to make a video on how my ideology has progressed, how I've changed the way I view things, how I view life. It really did all start with that memory, really. I made a video just up there, just over there, a little bit over that way, on that rock, not long after I got back from Brazil, about what I probably would imagine, would guess to be a near-death experience that I had when I was very young. And yeah, for some reason that video got a lot of hits. People are interested in that kind of thing. But yeah, my journey really all began with that memory. And it's interesting really to think that it may have been the first memory that I ever had. My first memory of life really was of that near-death experience, if that's what it was. But as I said at the end of that video that I made up there, that it really was the most powerful force, really has been the most powerful force in my life, that memory, that indescribable memory that I have buried deep down somewhere there in my mind. And so it all began with that, really, that memory. And it perplexed me and it confused me, and it didn't make any sense, and I didn't know where it had come from, and I kind of got in my mind, for some reason, all these new age books that were popular back then, with the idea of being on a path, that everyone's on a path, and you've got to discover your path, and you've got to get on the right path. And once you're on the right path, everything's going to be great. And I kind of took that to be, well, perhaps that memory that I have, that inexplicable feeling buried down, perhaps that is some sort of calling, some sort of promise, some sort of memory of a past life. Who knows how I comprehended this whole situation of what I experienced. And so I took that possibly as being some sort of calling, and so I began with this idea of, well, I need to be out. It's some sort of calling out there that's calling me. My special place is somewhere out there, who knows where, but I have to go out and find it. And it's not here, for sure. It's definitely not here, because of how unhappy I was back then. And I was quite unhappy when I used to live here. When I was studying, I was quite unhappy, And I thought to myself, there has to be something out there. There has to be a way out of this. I knew that there was so much more underneath. I knew that there was something else, something much better. And I assumed that I could find this thing. I assumed that I could find this wonderful feeling, this wonderful existence. But not only that, I kind of had in my mind, well, this idea of finding this. If I ever found this place, I thought to myself, well, that will prove so much. That will prove that this idea of the path is real. It will prove that We do have a special destiny in life. It will prove, many things. The possibility of many things beyond a material world. It will prove that beyond this hard material world that we're presented with, that there is another world, or there is some other aspect to that world that is more human, that is more spirit, that's hoping that somehow that we will come round to that perfect existence, a destiny. Anyway, so I set out with the idea of moving away from my home country and moving into the deepest part of the Amazon jungle. And that's where I lived for more than a decade, in the Amazon. And yeah, lots of things happened. I mean, that's another story. I could make a whole book on what happened there. The time that I was living in the Amazon region of South America. But certainly, I never found that place. I never found what I was looking for. And at the time, when I sort of began, I mean, it came in waves of realization. New journeys I would take, new adventures, new expeditions I would do into certain regions of the jungle, looking for my ideal. And each time I come back, disappointed that I hadn't found what I was looking for. And so over time I came to the realization that I wasn't going to find that. But it was a slow process, slow process. Who knows, even today maybe there's still a little bit in me hoping for that perfect existence to somehow pop up. But yeah, of course it didn't, and what it did to me back then, when I sort of first came around to this realization that I wasn't going to find it, that this world wasn't going to provide me with what I craved. I thought, right, well, I'm going to be an atheist, because actually, until then, I still had a kind of a relationship with what I guess you'd call, a New Age type idea of God, an energy force. Of course, I mean, I was on a mission to find what that energy force, whatever it was, had planned, had laid out for me there, and was waiting for me. So of course I had an idea of a God somewhere beyond this physical world. And of course I was resentful, when I didn't find anything, when I got to the end of the road, when I got to the end of the line. I mean, there's so many times when there was one time when I took a trip right up to the equator, right up a river, through Indian territory. Got right all the way up there, and there was nothing. It was just silent, I mean, of course, what would I expect? I wasn't truly expecting to find some magical rainbow place at the end of the river, but so yeah, there was an element of resentfulness, towards the universe, towards God, whatever you want to call it. And I was just, it always amazed me how, whenever I'd go on one of these trips, or whenever I'd reach this point of psychological exertion in looking and trying and striving to attain the goals that I needed to establish myself in that ideal place. I was always so amazed how when I finally got to the end of the road, so many times, so many examples of accomplishing something, and I'd sort of think, well, where are you? You've called me here. You've made my life hell. You've made my life hell, calling me here to this point. All my life you've been sitting on like a monkey sitting on the shoulder, just continuously. Come on, you've got to get out of here. You've got to get to that place. You've got to get there. And it was hell, it just made my life a misery. And it was continuous. And then when I got to these places, when I reached these endpoints, these crescendos of where I assumed I had to be, that little voice that had always been there was silent. It just wasn't there anymore. So in the end, what happened was that I thought, well, right, I don't believe in any of this stuff. I don't believe in the path anymore. I don't believe in a spiritual world. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in destiny anymore. I'm an atheist. I'm a physicalist, materialist. That's all I believe in. And I experimented. I actually experimented. I wasn't, who knows what goes on inside the mind, but I said to myself, right, I'm just going to take a month off thinking about this stuff. I'm just going to take 1 month. I'm not going to think about God anymore. I'm not going to try to communicate with God. I'm not going to try to please whatever this God was. I'm not going to even think about it. I'm not going to communicate. I'm not going to pray. And so I did that for 1 month. There's a dolphin right there. Dolphin right there in front of me. So I did that for a month, and I wasn't, being an atheist, physicalist, I wasn't going to, I've always hated atheism and this idea of materialism and physicalism. I always hated it. I don't know why. I've just had this real aversion to it. Ever since I studied, my course was very materialistic in what they taught, and I hated it for some reason. I don't know why. I guess I've always felt that human beings are much more than just physical bodies. But that's where maybe I was wrong, because I became a skeptic. I decided to stop thinking about anything apart from the physical world. And I did that for a month, as I said. And then I thought to myself, well, I could stay like this for the rest of my life, like so many people have. I mean, so many people have been through what I went through, and decided to stop thinking about a spiritual world, decided to stop thinking about God, praying to God. And I thought, right, why not continue with this skepticism? Why do I have to stop here in the material world? Can I be more of a skeptic? If that's the way that I'm going anyway, if that's the way that the rest of the world is headed, this skepticism that's so popular, can't I continue with that? And how would I continue with that skepticism? How would that translate into an ideology? And I realized that, after a lot of thinking, I came to the conclusion that I think a lot of thinkers in the end come to. That all we can be certain of, really, if you want to be a 100% skeptic, you have to draw the line. You have to draw the line when you get to your own consciousness. You can't be skeptical of everything. Something has to be real. Something has to exist. There wouldn't be all this variation in experience if there wasn't something there. And so I thought, well, to take it one step further would be to forget this belief in a material world as well. Eradicate the material world. That's the way we're all headed anyway. That's the way that the world is going. Very slowly, of course. Well, who knows slowly, but certainly if you talk to most materialists, physicalists these days, the idea of negating a material world is just ridiculous. Solipsism, that kind of thing. But I think in the end that's the way we're all going. I think that's the way that I went anyway. I mean, I certainly still hold on to that idea. It's kind of a core for me now. When things are difficult in life, and I just kind of come back to that central notion of, what am I certain of? I'm certain of experience. I'm certain of consciousness. That's what I'm certain of. And so that's kind of the story of how I got to this ideology of a reduction in belief, experimenting really with this idea of not believing in a physical world, because in the end, what is belief anyway? What is belief? How can we say that we do or don't believe in something, really?